This is Dontcalltechsupport, and NVIDIA recently announced DLSS 2.0, which is supposed to be an improvement upon the original DLSS. NVIDIA did set the bar pretty low for themselves though, as enabling DLSS in many cases was the equivalent of applying a blur filter. I once enabled it at 1080p in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and even the main menu was a blurry mess. NVIDIA has apparently fixed this with DLSS 2.0, but the developers have to implement this new improved version, and I'm guessing not a lot of the older games will get this DLSS 2.0 update, so I don't think Shadow of the Tomb Raider will get it. I'm guessing Battlefield won't get it, but there are 4 games out now that support it, and NVIDIA is claiming that it's easier to implement than the old technique. So the 4 games that support it is Control, Deliver to the Moon, MechWarrior 5 and Wolfenstein Youngblood. And today we will focus on Control because it's a game I'm familiar with and quite like actually. But the test system for today is the Gigabyte RTX 2070 Super Gaming OC paired with an AMD Ryzen R5 2700X on an X470 Taichi motherboard with 16GB of 3200MHz CL16 memory. I tested at 1440p and 1080p, but we will use the 1440p clips in the image analysis because the upside and downsides are very similar across resolutions as far as I could tell. I did record performance numbers at both 1080p and 1440p though, so I will show you them at the end of the video. I tested with high settings and all the ray tracing goodness on. So we start with testing NVIDIA's claims in their article, where they showed a remarkable improvement in image quality when staring at a moving fan. So I'm not going to tell you which one of these are DLSS, DLSS 2.0 or native resolution just yet. I'll give you 3 seconds to decide. Pause the video if you like. So, did you guess correctly? Good job. The middle one is clearly struggling with the fan blades moving behind the fence, and this is DLSS version 1. The left is the 1440p native image, and the one on the right is DLSS 2.0. NVIDIA's claim seems to be confirmed here, so DLSS 2.0 is a massive improvement in this case, and by freezing the frame and zooming in on the character, we can see that the jacket and hair is noticeably more blurry with DLSS 1.0 than both the native resolution and DLSS 2.0. Actually, I think DLSS 2.0 to my eye looks ever so slightly sharper than the native 1440p image. In the next scene we're staring at a bulletin board, and again the DLSS 1.0 image does appear slightly blurry in comparison with the other two. So this is clear from the text on the board and other details like the chair to the right of the character. Zooming in on the bulletin board, we can see that the text is clearly fuzzy with the original DLSS. The native image is a lot sharper, but again the DLSS 2.0 image appears to be ever so slightly sharper. Now let's try to add some sharpening to the native image to see if enabling something like freestyle sharpening, for instance, can make it closer to DLSS 2.0. So with some sharpening, the native image and DLSS 2.0 are much more similar in my opinion. Of course, DLSS 2.0 has the advantage here though, because it does come with a considerable performance boost, whereas the sharpening usually comes with a minor performance loss. In our last scene, we stare at our own reflection. With DLSS 1.0, in particular, the facial features appear less defined than the native resolution and DLSS 2.0. Here, I really can't choose between the native image and DLSS 2.0. I think both of them look pretty good, so I'll probably go with DLSS 2.0 because of the performance improvement. Now let's go back to the male scene. Let's go back to the male scene and compare the performance mode, quality mode, and I suppose balance mode of the DLSS. So the performance mode renders a 720p image, the quality mode renders a 836p image or something like that, and the quality mode renders a 960p image. If you turn your attention to the tiles in the right side of the image, you can see that the edges of the tiles are a lot cleaner with the quality or 960p setting. The performance mode or 720p has a lot of jagged edges on these tiles, while the 835p image is a little bit cleaner. But the quality mode is a clear winner here in my opinion. But let's look at the performance. So 1440p first, and at a native 1440p we struggle to even hit 30 frames per second on average with ray tracing enabled. Enabling DLSS 1.0 or 2.0 gives pretty much the same result, at slightly over 50 frames per second on average, a 75% performance bump, which is very welcome, and delivering a smoother experience than at native resolution, but it's still not optimal. Turning rendering resolution to 835p, or balance mode I suppose, is getting us close to 60 frames per second on average at 59 FPS. It is 95% ahead of the native resolution and 11% ahead of the 960p result. At 720p or performance mode, we get 68 frames per second on average, which is a 15% performance bump over the balanced mode, and 127% ahead of the native resolution. And the experience now is pretty smooth, with frame times only slightly below 60 frames per second, but image quality does take a slight hit with a lot more jagged edges. And at 1080p native resolution we end up at 45.2 frames per second on average. It is playable but not ideal. With DLSS 1.0 or 2.0 at 720p we're up to close to 70 frames per second on average, and it's now a much smoother experience. And as you might notice, this result is similar to the 1440p result when we render at 720p. As a bonus, here is a short comparison of an RX 5700 XT running Control with high settings at 1080p, rendering in 720p with Radeon image sharpening at 80%, next to a 1080p image with DLSS on, also rendering at 720p, next to a DLSS 2.0 image, rendering at 626p. Keep in mind that the 5700 XT is obviously not running ray tracing, so any differences in lighting would be because of that. DLSS 2.0 has proven to be a good and necessary improvement on the original DLSS, and the question now is, what will AMD's response be? As of right now, there are not enough games supporting DLSS 2.0 to be a feature I would weigh heavily when choosing a graphics card, but that may change in the future, which could mean that the lower-end RTX cards would punch above their weight class. When playing the Control expansion later this week, I will keep DLSS on to get a bit of an extra performance bump without sacrificing image quality. Good job, NVIDIA! So, that's pretty much all I have for you for now. Thank you so much for watching, and farewell!